Good afternoon, children, and welcome to Chapter 10 of The Adventures of Tzar the Paddington Poodle Brahman Bull Encounter. Now look who's popped in to say hello. High five, Ziggy. High five. Yay! Ziggy's popped in to say hello, but he is going to leave. So ta-ta, bye everybody. Off you go, Zig. Bye. There we go. So let's get stuck into Chapter 10. So this brings us to the last chapter in this lovely book. I'm sure you're enjoying your school holidays. All right now. Will someone turn off the alarm? Screamed Tzar, sitting up and rubbing the sleep from his eyes. What is that dreadful sound? He asked, covering his ears to dull the hideous sound. Dude, I don't know what's worse, you screaming or those wretched cockatoos, yawned Saxby. Don't tell me it's morning already, said Ivan, stretching his neck. What? It's not an alarm, so we can't turn it off, croaked Ziggy, looking up at the tree above his head that was overflowing with white, yellow-crested birds. He was momentarily blinded as the sun's rays bounced off their stark white feathers. Tzar and Ziggy watched in fascination as the birds performed the various aerobatic movements, swinging from one branch to the other as if they were on a flying trapeze. Who needs a circus when you have this mob, said Tzar, spellbound by the birds' aerial prowess. Boring, said Ivan, rolling his eyes. Breakfast is ready, yelled Wally, banging loudly on the billy to get their attention. Startled, the cockatoos tore off in every direction, squawking and screeching, deafening everyone within a 100-metre radius. What on earth is that? Tzar asked, pointing to a flat green mass floating in the sky. That, my friends, is the Outback magic carpet, chuckled Saxby, winking across to Ivan. Oh, sure it is, said Tzar. Now let's have a look at that. So there we have the cockatoos, Saxby, Ivan, Tzar and Ziggy, and the big mass floating in the background. I'm going to tell you it's the fastest way to travel around here, said Saxby, bursting into laughter, just as the magic carpet exploded into 1,000 pieces, transforming themselves into green birds. Magic carpet, my foot, they're green budgerigars, chortled Tzar. Saxby, you're wickedly funny, giggled Ziggy. Good morning, Ruby, said Ziggy, spotting the little mouse sitting on Wally's shoulder. Morning, Zig. Can't chat now, as you can see, I'm a little busy, Ruby replied, turning her attention back to breakfast. Folks, we mount up in half an hour, so eat up, said Ernie. That breakfast was scrumptious, said Ziggy, rubbing his tummy. You're right, Ziggy, that was yummy, said Ivan, burping loudly again. Manners, dear bro, manners, said Saxby, licking the crumbs from his lips. With breakfast over, it was time for the gang to move on to the final leg of the trip. Big black clouds hung low in the sky, and Tzar could almost smell the rain. He noticed the drovers and the folks busily saddling the horses and sighed. I guess this is where we said goodbye, said Ivan, tears sprouting in his eyes. So where are you heading to today? Tzar asked, feeling strangely emotional. He had enjoyed spending time with the dingoes and wished they were coming with them. We're off to West Arnhem Land, where we will be safe with others from our tribe, Saxby replied. I'm sure you know our breed is under the threat of extinction. As a matter of fact, we do, so please take care of yourselves, replied Ziggy. Here are a few goodies Wally has put together to keep you going for a couple of days. It's some steak and a few eggs, said Tzar, pulling the pandanus-wrapped parcels from the fridge and handing one to each dog. Thank you, friends. We are really going to miss you, said the dingoes, giving each of the poodles a hug and a kiss. The poodles waited till their friends had disappeared into the distance, then moseyed over to join the others where Ziggy was hoisted into the saddlebag. Hey guys, Wally is dropping me off at my cousin's shortly, said a teary-eyed Ruby. Rube, it's been great having you, and I trust your cousin will be all right, said Tzar, wiping away her tears with his paw. Take care of yourself. Bye, Ruby, said Ziggy, blowing her a kiss. Slipping into the front seat of the ute, Wally and Ruby drove off towards Borroloola. Ranger, do you mind if I walk with you for a while? Tzar asked, falling into step with the big bull. Well, that was an interesting night, don't you think? There's never a dull moment around you, Ranger, laughed Tzar. Say, that's not a graveyard, is it? Tzar pointed to what looked like a cemetery directly ahead of them. There were acres and acres of the red-coloured mounds in the shape of tombstones, all facing in the same direction. Because if it is, that's a load of dead bodies in there, he shuddered violently. It sure does look like it, replied Ranger, chuckling loudly. You know, I've seen them before, Tzar added. Actually, they're magnetic termite mounds. Oh, duh, of course they are. The skinny sides face magnetic north and south. Well, it looks like we have beaten the flood, said Ranger, looking up at the dark sky heavy with rain. With a big thrust, the gate to the Kenji estate flew open, and the young herd pushed and squeezed themselves through the opening till they were finally in their new home. We made it, squealed Ziggy, clapping his paws together. The gate closed with a big thud, and the Gan bid the young herd farewell and turned and headed to the stables they had seen on their way in. What's going to happen to the cattle now? Asked Tzar, his brow furrowing in the middle of his forehead. As an animal conservationist, he was greatly concerned for their welfare. Don't worry, they will be well looked after. We only let our livestock go to farmers who treat their animals ethically, he replied. Well, that's a relief. I had visions of them being shipped out as live cattle. No, we don't support the live cattle trade. Thank goodness, it's way too cruel. Tzar, have you heard? Wally has a surprise for us, said Ziggy as the mum lifted him out of the saddlebag and plonked him on the ground next to him. Yep, but I don't know what it is, do you? Afraid not. A big horse truck pulled up right in front of the gang and the driver hopped out and lowered the ramp. Moseying up the ramp with his big, thick tail swinging back side to side, Shout said, "See you folks later," then disappeared inside. I despise these things, Shout stated, dancing around at the base of the camp like she was at a disco. Giving her a helping hand, Ernie tapped her gently on the rub and she shot inside. Hey guys, see you back at the Heartbreak Hotel and have fun sightseeing, said Ranger, dipping inside with Axel in tow. The tailgate was lifted into place, then Ernie and Jimmy jumped into the front cabin and the truck lurched forward, rolling down the dusty rocky road. The gang will love that air conditioning, said Tzar, watching them disappear into the horizon. A large four-wheel drive pulled up beside them and they were surprised to see Wally at the wheel. They climbed on board and drove off, leaving a cloud of dust behind them. 35 minutes later, they rolled into the tree-studded streets of Borroloola and pulled up outside the general store. A tall, skinny Aboriginal man sidled up to the four-wheel drive and thrust his head through the window and said, "G'day. I'm Gidja, but everyone calls me Charlie. I'm your guide for today, eh?" "Woof, woof, woof," replied Tzar and Ziggy, wagging their tails welcomely. "Nice dogs, eh?" said Charlie, giving Tzar a pat on his fluffy head. "This is my brother Wally, but you already know him. We're from the Yanyuwa tribe," he said, sticking his skinny head out for the folks to shake. He quickly climbed into the front seat, and Wally pressed his foot to the pedal for approximately 30 kilometres till they came to a large set of rock formations. "Where are we?" Tzar wondered, popping his head out the window to get his bearings. "We're in blackfella country now, eh?" "This is my people's place," said Charlie as they disembarked the vehicle. "We're not far from the coast of the Gulf of Carpentaria. Good barramundi country, eh?" "Follow me and I'll take you to some magical place, eh?" said Charlie as they headed up the hill. "We call in place Kuminyana Springs. This is where our people draw Aboriginal history on their walls," he added, pointing to the cave that hung overhead. "Well, let's have a look at that picture, shall we?" Beautiful. "Goodness, Tzar, how on earth are we supposed to get up there?" Ziggy asked, looking up in wonder at the sheer cliffs that dropped 50 metres to the ground. They could just make out the caves that hung precariously at the edge. "Too bad that magic carpet was a myth. We could have hitched a ride," he said, giggling hysterically. "I guess we're about to find out," Tzar replied, picking his way through the rough-trodden track. "I'm really psyched. We're going to see some real Aboriginal rock art," said Ziggy. "Unlike you, Tzar, I have only ever seen them in books and in photos you and the folks took in Alice Springs." It's amazing, you know, and rich in history, our history, said Tzar proudly. After what seemed an eternity, they finally arrived at the top of the plateau and paused to take in the view. They marvelled at the landscape below them as it stretched out before them like an exquisite oil painting, its colours jumping out at them from the canvas. Gosh, doesn't it just take your breath away, said Tzar, losing himself in the moment. Charlie cautioned them to wait for him, but Ziggy, eager to see the paintings, ignored Charlie's warning and ran on ahead, entering the first cave he came to. "Oh my goodness, what on earth is that horrid smell?" his voice echoing as it bounced off the walls of the cave. Tzar peeled his eyes away from the magnificent scenery and tore off after Ziggy when he heard his voice in the distance. Just as he was about to enter the cave, he recognized the smell from a previous encounter and screamed, "Quick, get out of there!" But it was too late. Ziggy had woken thousands of orange-leafed nosed microbats, which took to the air in an enormous orange cloud. The sheer force of their numbers caused Ziggy to be swept along with them as they hurtled towards the mouth of the cave. Tzar flattened himself to the ground just in the nick of time as the bats burst into the sky and Ziggy disappeared over the cliff. Tzar scrambled to his feet and peered over the ledge, but Ziggy was nowhere to be seen. "Ziggy!" he screamed over and over. His heart was beating like a hammer against his chest. Tears sprang to his eyes and he wiped them away so he could search the canyon below, but he couldn't see his little brother anywhere. "There he is," yelled Charlie, spotting the little poodle clinging to a tiny shrub on the ledge 20 metres below. Charlie had been an exceptional tracker in his earlier years, and everyone was grateful he still had it in him. "We'd better hurry. I don't know how long he can hang on for," said the mum. "Can either of you abseil?" Wally asked, looking at the mum and the dad. "I'm afraid not," replied the dad, shaking his head in the negative. "Don't worry. The missus is the lighter, so we'll lower her down," said Charlie, tying a sturdy rope around the mum's waist. The mum had seen plenty of abseiling movies and wondered how hard it could be. Throwing her leg over the edge, she could feel the terror rising in her throat, but it did not deter her from saving Ziggy. Centimetre by centimetre, they lowered her down, and just as she was about to reach out and grab him, the ledge he was standing on gave way. Feeling it go beneath him, Ziggy closed his eyes and took a giant leap, flinging himself at her. His chest hit her. He hit her chest with a big thud, and she instinctively wrapped her arms around him. Cheers from above confirmed he was safely in her arms, and he opened his eyes to see the mum looking lovingly back at him. The incident did nothing to deter Ziggy, and once he was on terra firma, he said to Charlie, "Can we go and see the caves now?" causing everyone to break out in laughter. They cautiously entered the secret cave, but any fear or apprehension they may have had soon evaporated, as they were engulfed in an indescribable energy of spirit ancestors. Etched and painted on the cave walls in a myriad of colours sourced from local minerals, such as iron oxide, were a rich array of Australian Indigenous drawings that dated back centuries. There was a woman and a dingo, some mythical stick figures, and the sea mammals known as dugongs, which are important to the culture of the local Aborigines. Speechless, they took in the amazing rock art that had stood the test of time. It was like a spell had been put on them, and not a word was said until they left the cave. Let's have a look at some of those rock art. It's amazing, isn't it? "Well, I guess we better be getting you back, eh?" said Charlie as they settled themselves on the back seat. In no time the poodles were fast asleep to the gentle rocking as the four-wheel drive bounced its way along towards Cape Crawford. Tzar and Ziggy woke when the car stopped at the gate of the Heartbreak Hotel, and hanging their heads out the window chatted to Ranger and the cronies. "So how was it?" asked Ranger. "Absolutely brilliant," said a starry-eyed Ziggy. Tzar spotted the new tyres leaning up against their cabin and knew there and then that their time at Cape Crawford was coming to an end. I've got to warn you, Tzar, that crazy frilled-necked lizard has been babbling on and on about you and him catching up, or something to that effect. Look, I think the sun's gotten to him and he's gone nuts, said Ranger, rolling his eyes in frustration. Ziggy spotted Aigon pacing backwards and forwards and waved. He instantly snapped his frill open and danced around in excitement. Hello, Aigon, said Tzar as he and Ziggy leapt out of the vehicle. Am I glad to see you, he replied, giving Ziggy a big hug. Ranger said you'd be back this afternoon, though I must say he was a little sketchy on the details. So how was the trip? What did you see? Did you meet any interesting animals? Did you get up to anything exciting? Did you run into any danger on the way? He asked, barely taking a breath. Oh, you must tell me everything, he squealed, shaking in excitement. Boy, have we got some stories to tell you, said Ziggy, plonking himself on the soft grass next to Tzar. Come on, pull up a blade of grass and get cosy, said Tzar, patting the grass beside him. He and Ziggy took it in turns to recount the events of the past few days, giving Aigon every minute detail. Let's have a look at them. So here we have Tzar, Aigon and Ziggy. Aigon hung on to their every word, his eyes never leaving either of the poodles' faces. Wow, you are both so brave, he said admiringly. They talked late into the night until the mum and the dad finally insisted that the poodles come to bed, and they reluctantly parted company. Aigon woke early and scampered over to the cabin and peered in to find it empty. Looking around, he spotted Ranger and Shout standing by the gate and scurried over to join them. Morning, guys. Say, do you know where Tzar and Ziggy are? He inquired, his eyes darting around in wild excitement. I'm afraid they have just left, Ranger replied, pointing to the four-wheel drive rolling out the gate. They're coming back, right? Sadly not, bubbled Shout. Quick, hop onto my back and you'll be able to get a glimpse of them leaving, said Ranger. What, no goodbyes? He asked, leaping up onto Ranger's muscly rub. Luckily, Shout and I were up early and happened to catch them as they were jumping into their car. They said they find it heartbreaking every time they have to leave their friends behind. So they thought it was best to just slink away without making too much of a fuss, and asked us to pass on their goodbyes, said Ranger, tears rolling down his handsome face. We're going to miss those two, muttered Shout, shaking his mane over his face to hide the tears that had puckered up in his eyes. Suddenly, to Ranger, Shout and Aigon's surprise, Tzar and Ziggy stuck their heads out of the window and furiously waved goodbye as they disappeared over the horizon. The end. Let's have a look at that picture. So you can see Aigon, Shout, Bullet and Tzar and Ziggy in the car saying goodbye. And I'm afraid, children, that brings us to the end of our fabulous book, The Adventures of Tzar the Paddington Poodle Brahman Bull Encounter. Now, I'm sure you've enjoyed the book, so if you would like to get a copy of the book, you can go to this site, www.tzarthepaddingtonpoodle.com.au. That's www.tzarthepaddingtonpoodle.com.au. I've really enjoyed bringing the adventures of Tzar the Paddington Poodle Brahman Bull to you, and I'm sure you've enjoyed your time listening in. So children, this concludes our story. Keep your eyes and ears peeled for our next story. In a couple of weeks, we'll start the adventures of Tzar the Paddington Poodle Goanna Encounter. In the meantime, happy holidays and bye!